Hello, everyone. Bladen Brightrider, incident meteorologist, here with Jasmine, sign language interpreter, to give you a weather update for the Hermit's Peak and Calf Canyon fires for Monday, May 16th. So we'll start on the map over here, kind of give you a recap of what we saw last night. We had a backdoor cold front that descended into the northeastern plains, and it surged southward and westward in the early evening hours. In fact, it hit Angel Fire up there at about 5 p.m., and it hit Las Vegas down here at about 6 p.m. We saw wind gusts associated with this get up into 30 to 40 miles an hour range, and as it comes back down through here, the winds begin to turn easterly. So the big concern last night was, how is all of this and all of that going to react to an east or southeasterly push? So thankfully, it was pretty blustery as it came in here, but as it pushed easterly, it lost a good bit of its steam. And as it actually got into the western portion of the fire perimeter there, we actually saw quite a bit of reduction of those winds. So thankfully, we didn't really see too much channeling as we got into the drainages in and around the western slopes of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, or at least this portion of them out here. And we didn't necessarily see too much growth extend via the helping of those winds. Now, what came in behind that backdoor cold front was an incredible influx of moisture. So looking down here on the southern zone of the fire, we saw relative humidity recoveries, basically how much moisture was recovered overnight, in the 50 to 60% range. Now, up at Chacon, which is too tall for me, but up there in the northern portion of the fire, was really one of my favorite observations that I saw, that they had 8% as their minimum, and that was at 6 p.m. yesterday. And then just after 6 a.m. this morning, they got up to 72%. So that's an incredible recovery, and it's not one that we've seen here during the duration of this fire very often, really only a handful of times, and I believe 2 of those were back during my first tenure here back in late April. So we have moisture. We have a little bit of cooling thanks to that backdoor front. Probably about 5 to 7 degrees is what we can expect today as far as our daytime highs in comparison to yesterday. So looking to get into the lower 70s, upper 70s, with a few overachievers trying to get into the upper 80s as we go into the peak afternoon heating of the day. Relative humidity minimums today, finally going to be out of that single-digit persuasion, but we may still have a few here and there that we might see get down into the 8 or 9% range. But for the most part, we're looking at 10 to 20% as we get into the afternoon hours today. Winds going to be kicked up a little bit, and we'll talk about why here in a second, but predominantly south-southwest in persuasion, looking to get into that 20 to 30 mile per hour range. And as we recall, right, that's hitting those red flag warning criteria. So our relative humidity value, remember, for red flag warning, we need about 15% or less, winds 20 to 30 miles per hour with gusts to 30 miles per hour, or excuse me, winds greater than 20 miles per hour, gusts to 30 miles per hour, and greater for red flag. We do have a red flag warning today, from 1200 until 2000, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. tonight. But it's not really for a lot of that criteria. It's actually was lifted up by the National Weather Service in Albuquerque for dry lightning and gusty and erratic outflow winds. So let's go take a look at what we're dealing with today. This is that simple water vapor imagery that I've shown a couple times here. And remember, the good thing about this is it shows us everything at all levels, as opposed to us having to look at, you know, one slice, mid slice, high slice. We can kind of see everything here, but we do have to kind of derive what we're looking at via the colors. So the green that we see here shows that we have high level moisture but dry underneath. And then as we get into New Mexico here, you can see this kind of milky pink color there is a mid-level cloud with moisture at all levels. So as opposed to having a mid-level cloud that is dry underneath or dry above. And so as you can see, we have our ridge right here. The apex of that has gone on and is starting to push into the Great Plains there, and right behind it is that trough. And so I know it's really, really hard to see given the way that they do the colors on this, but we do have quite the increase in winds along the eastern periphery of this trough. And so with that and this influx of moisture, we're getting two very important things for something that we need today. We have instability that tends to ride along and get amplified by the eastern periphery of a trough. Then we have the moisture, and then in addition to that, we have the backdoor front, and troughs invariably provide their own lift. So moisture, instability, lift, the three ingredients that we need for thunderstorms. So right now, as we're doing this is about 11:30-ish. These mid-level clouds and high-level stuff is going to push off. It's going to clear out behind us. We're going to be able to get some decent sunlight in here, some solar radiation to get some thermals going. That's going to only enhance our instability. And that, and amongst this moisture, is going to give us the rise of thunderstorms today. Now, in this area, they like to play by the same playbook. Generally, most of the time, especially in monsoon season, we see them kind of start up over the spine of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, and those little cumulus clouds kind of sit and hang out. They start to tower up. They kind of get their energy going, and once they kind of get mature enough, they grow up enough that they're allowed to drive, they actually will catch the steering flow and they'll push off. And in this case, our steering flow today is going to send them to the northeast. Now, the closer we are to the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, the less favorable some of those conditions are. But the moment that you get around the fire perimeter, eastward, and especially east of I-25, things become far more favorable for those kind of baby thunderstorms to turn into strong, potentially severe thunderstorms out there. So for us, here across the majority of the Calf Canyon and Hermit's Peak fires, we'll likely see them start out over here. They won't be too much to write home about as they're getting going, but as they push off and they start to move into a more favorable environment, we start to get the hazards of very, very high winds. Gusty, erratic, can come from all directions, and as you can imagine, that is an incredible threat to firefighter safety. So, expecting those to peak today here after 1 p.m., more likely between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. today. Again, the primary threats are going to be those gusty, erratic at-flow winds, the most robust of which will likely be hitting in the 60 to 70 mile an hour range. But we're expecting that to be very, very isolated. This is not going to be a situation where we have, very numerous coverage of severe weather out there. It's thankfully going to be something that we're going to be able to monitor very, very easily as we go into the day. Now, the number one question I always get when I talk about thunderstorms in New Mexico is, are we going to get any rain? Well, keep in mind, we could get some rain, but there's a big difference between just getting a couple hundredths of rain versus actual wetting rain. And for us right now, wetting rain is looking not very favorable. I would like to see for that over a quarter of an inch, more like a half an inch, especially across some of these heavier fuels there, because we've had such prolonged, dry, single-digit, kind of conditions as far as our relative humidity goes. So it's even if we got a half inch, it's not going to do enough to really dampen that fire danger out there. And if we look at the matrix here, here we have this day. It's very dynamic. It's very complex. It's colorful. But as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you see right out of the gate, we're back to super, super dry. We're back to those west winds, which scours all that moisture out. So chance of wetting rainfall, maybe 10%, whereas the chance of thunder is more like 40%. So what we're more likely going to see are dry thunderstorms, which are going to have cloud to ground lightning that could cause new starts. It could also impact safety, and those gusty and erratic outflow winds. Now, just to speak of it, because I'm sure a lot of people aren't necessarily living right in here, right? They're way out here. As you get east of I-25, that's where those conditions really start to pick up to become more favorable to severe weather today. So definitely, keep your a weather eye open, and be aware of your surroundings, especially if you're working outside today in the afternoon hours, just so you know that if anything is coming from over here or even initiating out in this area, you could be looking at a much different setup than what we're looking at over here. So, looking at the matrix just real quick, like I said, after today, we're going to be trending warmer again, continue dry, and those single-digit relative humidity minimums, alongside with poor overnight recovery. Unstable again for the remainder of the week until we get into the weekend. Continued strong winds, 20, gusts 30, so we're already into that critical fire weather pattern again, all of which are going to have a southwest or west sort of nature to them. As we get into Thursday and Friday, that's when we see another high-level storm system coming in that could really have some impacts. And then Saturday looking quite a bit cooler compared to where we were yesterday, getting up into the low to mid 80s. We're going to see low to mid 70s, so quite a significant cold front coming in down the way as we get into the weekend. That's all I have for you guys today. Please stay safe out there today, rock and roll, and I'll see you tomorrow.